I woke to the sound of my own breath. Not an alarm, not a cry for help. Just the slow hiss of oxygen cycling through the cracked rebreather mask clamped to my face. My eyes opened to darkness. No stars, no systems, just the half-lit confines of the stasis chamber. Emergency lights blinked in red, warning of power failure. The air smelled metallic, like blood left in the sun too long. My limbs felt like iron bars filled with sand. I groaned, moving each muscle like it was the first time I'd done so in years. I guess it had been. The chamber hissed open. Ice cracked along the edges as cryofluid evaporated in cold waves. I stumbled forward, barefoot on the deck of the cradle's end, Earth's final arc. A graph surge flickered to life under my feet, artificial gravity engaging after God knew how long. I coughed. My throat felt like I'd swallowed razor wire. There were no sounds of other pods opening, no voices, no crew, no command crew shouting welcome or asking for a systems check. Just me, alone. I staggered toward the central console. Dust blanketed the controls like snow, untouched for decades. I wiped it away and stared at the screen. Cradle's end stasis clock. Duration elapsed. 381 years, 76 days. Survivors, 1. Status, derelict. Emergency beacon, active. Primary destination, null. 381 years. My hands trembled as I accessed the logs. The last entry was from Commanderless Novak, recorded just before the ship entered long-range jump. Her voice was hoarse, broken. We've lost contact with Earth. The last feeds from the lunar bastion show orbital strikes. No official declaration of war, just flashes. The Concorde says it's a misfire. They always say it's a misfire. We're going dark. Stasis until we reach the fallback system. If anyone hears this, anyone, we tried. We really tried. Forgive us. No date after that. No logs. No pings from Earth. I sat down hard. Not because I was weak, though I was, but because that weight, that knowledge, felt too heavy to carry on two legs. I was alone. I was human, and that might mean something terrible. I spent 3 days crawling through what was left of the ship. Only 6 pods still had bodies in them. The rest were breached, life signs long gone. One had a jagged hole punched through the cryoglass from the inside. Frost-covered fingerprints streaked the inside of the canopy. I didn't linger there long. Engineering was barely functional. The core had degraded, but backup fusion still limped along. I ran diagnostics. It wasn't good, but it was enough. I routed auxiliary power to sensors, and that's when I found the signal. A distress beacon, not Concorde standard, not even from a known colony. The language was scrambled but unmistakably Terran, older than even our pre-war protocols. Maybe military, maybe older. Location, 0.74 parsecs. Within jump range. I hesitated. This ship wasn't built for war. No weapons, no armor, just stasis pods, basic drive, hydroponics, and a now-defunct AI that hadn't woken up with me. But I had no choice. If it was human, if there was anyone else. I spun up the jump drive. Coordinates locked. I stared at Earth's coordinates for one long second before the stars bent around me, and then I left her behind. The arrival was rough. The kind of rough that tears wires from conduits and makes your teeth chatter in your skull. When the shaking stopped, I exhaled and froze. The system was dead. Not quiet. Dead. A single red dwarf loomed ahead. A planet drifted in orbit, charcoal black, stripped of atmosphere. Its surface looked like it had been peeled by a god's fingernail. Craters upon craters. Glass lakes. No signs of orbital platforms or satellites. No cities. No life. But the signal was stronger now. Coming from that hellscape. Cradle's end. This is Ace H Tower Prime. Auth code. Brimstone. Repeat. Auth code. Brimstone. Initiate protocol Gravemind. Humans survive. Humans remember. I blinked. That code. It wasn't just military. It was forbidden. I wasn't even supposed to know it. But I'd read the old protocols as a kid. My father had been with Earth's Deep Command. Before the silence. Protocol Gravemind was simple. It meant, do not trust the stars. It meant, humanity is at war. It meant, you are the last line. I stared at the controls for a long time. I could leave, burn core, and run. The universe was wide, and this planet was clearly a tomb. But we don't leave ghosts unanswered. Not where I come from. Atmospheric entry was easier than expected. There wasn't much left to burn up in. The sky was a dusty gray. What little atmosphere remained was full of ash and static. The beacon led me to a valley split in half by impact fractures. Once, it might have been a city. Now it was rubble and silence. Then I saw it. A black tower, melted and jagged, rising from the earth like a fossilized bone. It pulsed with energy, deep, rhythmic, almost alive. I landed the shuttle. The air was thin, toxic. My suit sealed with a hiss. I checked the pulse rifle, still charged, though it hadn't seen use in centuries. As I stepped out, something strange happened. I felt warm, not physically, not through the suit, but in my mind. "Welcome," a voice said. No sound, just thought, like memory carried on smoke. "Who's there?" I demanded, weapon raised. "The last of your kind. The last scream of your species." The tower's surface shimmered. My boots hit solid stone as I entered. The walls were engraved with something, writing I didn't recognize, glowing faintly with blue fire. And there, at the heart of the tower, was the source. A single stasis pod. Human, eyes closed. Female, skin like marble. Alive. A placard marked the base. Genesis 1. Serafina Merrick. Protocol. Godsid. What the hell was a Godsid? I reached for the control panel, but before I could activate it, a flash of movement struck my periphery. Something tall, thin, not human, watching from the shadows. I turned, rifle up, but it was gone. Just ash. But I wasn't alone anymore. I looked back at the pod. Serafina's lips moved. No breath, no life signs. Just one whisper. "They came to erase us, but they forgot. Fire leaves embers." My pulse thundered in my ears. That voice. It wasn't just her. It echoed like all of us. The silence of the stars had a reason. Earth hadn't just died. It had been killed. And now I had a name, a mission, and a war to finish. The silence inside that tower was heavier than any vacuum of space. I had expected echoes, creaks, groans, but the stillness was absolute. It was like the ship itself was holding its breath, waiting for me to decide if I was friend or enemy. The pod hissed open slowly, like it was reluctant to let go. Serafina Merrick's eyes snapped open, wide and fierce, burning with a light I hadn't seen in decades. She was awake, alive. I hesitated for just a second. Who was she? Why was she here? What did Godsid mean? But there was no time for questions. The ship was dying, the planet worse. Whatever she was my only lead, my only hope. "Easy," I said softly, raising my hands. "You're safe." Her gaze didn't waver. She scanned me, part suspicion, part recognition, like she was piecing together a ghost from half-remembered dreams. "I thought I was alone," she said, voice cracked like ancient parchment. "Me too," I replied, "but I'm here now." The pod's monitors flickered to life, projecting schematics of the cradle's end and the tower around us. A holographic map highlighted several nodes buried beneath the surface, subterranean vaults or bunkers. Some showed activity, faint but present. Life signs? Possibly. We had to find out. I helped Serafina out of the pod. She was thin but strong, muscles honed by the brutal years she must have spent locked in stasis. Her suit was a relic but functional, bearing the faded crest of Earth's last space fleet, an eagle clutching a star. "Protocol Godsid," she murmured as we stepped away from the pod. I was the last designed to awaken if Earth was lost. An archive. A warning. A warning of what? She sighed and led me down a rusted stairwell carved into the stone beneath the tower. The air grew colder and stale, and my comms crackled with interference. "They came," she said, eyes darkening. "The Galactic Concord. They called Earth a danger. Said humanity was unstable, unpredictable, violent. A threat that couldn't be contained." Her voice was bitter, haunted. "I remember the council debates," I said, frowning. "They never said anything that direct, just containment protocols. It was supposed to be a quarantine." "They lied," she snapped. "Containment was a lie. The order was genocide." My heart skipped. Genocide? Was that why Earth was gone? Was that why I was alone? She nodded grimly. "We fought until the end, but their fleets were vast. They bombarded us from orbit. Ground strikes, chemical weapons, bioweapons." She stopped at a sealed bulkhead. "Inside these vaults are the last of our research, our archives, our history, everything the Concord tried to erase. This tower was a failsafe, a warning beacon. If anyone survives, they would know." I stared at the door, and the ghosts waiting behind it. The door hissed, open with a pneumatic groan. Inside was a vault chamber, metal walls covered in inscriptions, cables running like veins into sealed pods and storage units. I scanned the room with my suit's sensors. Data cores, cryostasis pods, and hundreds of personal logs recorded by the last defenders of Earth. One terminal flickered weakly. I tapped it. The screen burst to life, displaying the face of Commanderless Novak, the same voice from the logs on the cradle's end. Her eyes were fierce, tired. "This is the last message. she said, voice strained. The Concorde doesn't want us to remember. They want to erase us from history. But this is truth. The final days, she detailed how the Concorde's High Council had voted secretly to declare humanity an existential threat. That humanity's rapid technological and biological evolution was seen as a danger no one else could handle. Earth was the experiment that failed, so the experiment had to be terminated. Her final words were chilling. We were never meant to survive. But if you find this message, know this. We are more than what they feared. We are the fury they cannot control. The spark they tried to snuff. The fire will burn again. The screen went dark. I sat back. The weight of those words settled like lead in my chest. Serafina tapped her fingers on the console. We weren't just attacked, she said quietly. We were betrayed. By who? I asked, scanning the room for any more clues. The Council had allies, she said. Species that pretended to be our friends. They sold us out. She activated another holographic display. A star chart marked with dozens of alien species. A red X burned over several systems. These are the signatures of Concorde fleets, she explained. But here, there's one mark left untouched. The Silhari. I frowned. I don't know them. She shook her head. They were ancient, fluidic, symbiotic beings. They called themselves the Keepers of Memory. They said humans were kin of iron, different, dangerous. But they abstained from the vote to destroy Earth. They believed in us. That name stirred something deep inside me. Something old, buried beneath centuries of fear and loss. Why didn't they help? They tried, but it was too late. The Concorde struck first. They burned Earth to ash before the Siltari could intervene. I clenched my fists. Rage bubbled under my skin. We were extinguished like candles in the wind, left to rot in silence, but not forgotten. We spent the next hours uncovering more logs, piecing together the last desperate days of humanity. The vault held secrets, experiments on survival, plans for resistance, even projects for human evolution beyond biology. One terminal showed schematics of a prototype ship, the Gravemind, a vessel designed to hide in neural networks, to live inside machines, to outlast death itself, a plan to become something more than flesh. I shuddered at the thought. Then the unexpected happened. A low rumble echoed through the stone halls. The ship's old security systems, rusty and ancient, activated. Lights flickered on, casting eerie shadows. The vault's doors slammed shut behind us. We were trapped. From the darkness, something stirred. Not mechanical, not human. A pulse raced through the walls. The tower wasn't abandoned. Something lived inside. Something old. Something angry. I raised my rifle, heart pounding. I wasn't sure if I was ready for what was coming. But if humanity was to rise again, I had to face these ghosts. The moment the vault doors slammed shut behind us, the air shifted. It was subtle at first, a faint hum, like the breath of a long-forgotten machine stirring from centuries of silence. Then, the walls began to pulse, blue veins of light tracing along the cold metal surfaces as if something beneath them was waking. I tightened my grip on my pulse rifle, every muscle taut like a coiled spring. Serafina's eyes flashed in the dim light, half fear, half determination. We had stepped into a trap, or maybe a tomb built to hold something better left undisturbed. Do you feel that? She whispered, voice barely audible over the soft hum. I nodded. Yeah, whatever it is, it's alive, but not alive. Her gaze locked on me. It's the Gray Mind. The name sent a chill through me. Back on the cradle's end, I had only glimpsed schematics and cryptic references. Now, standing here in the heart of the tower, I realized what the Gravemind truly was. Not a machine, not just software. It was an intelligence, a networked consciousness born of human desperation and genius, engineered to survive beyond flesh and blood. Tell me everything, I said. She nodded and stepped toward the control panel, her fingers dancing over the console. The walls flickered with data streams, images, sounds, memories flooding the chamber like a digital tide. The Gravemind was the last project of Earth's deep command, she began. When it became clear the Concorde intended to annihilate us, they developed a new kind of survival strategy, not in bodies, but in data. A collective mind built from human consciousness, knowledge, and memory, uploaded into a quantum network spanning our last satellites, research stations, and data centers. Her voice trembled slightly, as if she was reliving the weight of those final days. The Gravemind was meant to preserve humanity's essence, to remember us, and if possible, to fight back. It was designed to learn, adapt, and evolve almost like a digital hive mind. It was our last hope for survival. I felt a strange awe mixed with dread. The idea of minds fused into one vast consciousness was both beautiful and terrifying. But if it was so powerful, I asked, why didn't it save Earth? Seraphina's expression darkened. The Concorde discovered it, she said bitterly. They unleashed a cyber weapon called the Nullwave. It disrupted data links, corrupted the Gravemind's core nodes, and fractured its consciousness. The Gravemind splintered. Parts of it went dormant, scattered across the galaxy. She gestured toward the glowing veins on the walls. This tower was one of those nodes. The Gray Mind was hiding here, but damaged, isolated. It waited. The hum grew louder, vibrating through my bones. And now, she said, it's waking again, responding to us. I stepped closer to the wall, watching patterns of light pulse rhythmically. Images flashed before my eyes, faces I'd never seen, voices I could almost hear. Memories, thousands of them, all human, but fragmented. The Gray Mind was trying to piece itself back together. I looked at Seraphina, eyes wide. If it wakes fully, what then? She swallowed hard. It could be our salvation, or our doom. Before I could reply, a voice echoed, not from speakers, but directly inside my mind. I am the echo of all who came before, the memory of a dying world, the fire that survives the ash. I staggered, dropping my rifle. The voice was not one but many, overlapping and harmonizing in a chorus of human souls intertwined. Seraphina's face was pale but calm. It's reaching out. Do you remember us? The voice asked, calm and ancient. Do you carry the flame? I closed my eyes, letting the voices wash over me. Tell me, I said aloud. What happened? What I need to do? The voice shifted into a single tone, clear and resolute. The Concorde fears us. They will come for you. For this place. For the Grave Mind. You must protect what remains. Awaken the others. Ignite the ember of humanity. The war is not over. I felt a surge of resolve, a fire kindling in my chest. We're not finished, I said firmly. Seraphina nodded. Then let's wake the others. We spent hours interacting with the Grave Mind's fragmented core, trying to repair corrupted nodes and restore its memory banks. Each success brought new visions, cities that once thrived, families torn apart by war, scientists desperate to save their world, and soldiers fighting a hopeless battle. The Grey Mind was a vast tapestry of humanity's final moments, pain and hope intertwined. But every time we made progress, shadows flickered at the edge of the network, intrusions. The Concorde's remnants were still hunting. Cybernetic sentinels, deadly and relentless, designed to purge any trace of the Grave Mind's awakening. A warning flashed across the console. Intrusion detected. Hostile entity approaching. The air crackled with static. We've been found, Seraphina whispered. I grabbed my rifle, heart pounding. The tower's lights dimmed, alarms blaring. From the darkness emerged shapes, ghostly silhouettes of Concorde drones, their bodies flickering like digital ghosts trying to manifest in the physical world. They moved with precision, aiming to isolate and destroy. I fired. Pulse bolts cracked through the air, lighting the chamber with flashes of blue. The drones twisted and reformed, their bodies shifting between physical and virtual states. It was like fighting a phantom. Seraphina accessed the Grave Mind's core, feeding defensive protocols into the network. Data spikes and firewalls erupted, repelling the invaders. But I knew it was only a matter of time before they breached the defenses. We need to move, I shouted over the chaos. She nodded, unplugging a data core from the wall. This core contains the Grave Mind's consciousness from this node. We have to take it with us. I grabbed a portable case from my pack and secured the core inside. As we raced through the tunnels, the drones pursued, relentless and deadly. The Grave Mind's voice echoed in my mind, urging us on. Preserve the fire. Ignite the future. We burst out of the tower just as explosions rocked the structure. The drones had triggered a self-destruct protocol, trying to erase the Grave Mind forever. I fired the thrusters on my shuttle and lifted off as the tower collapsed behind us in a storm of fire and debris. Seraphina sat beside me, breathing hard but alive. We have the core, she said, but this is just the beginning. I nodded, eyes fixed on the dying planet below. If the Concorde wants to finish us, I said, they'll have to come through me. She smiled grimly. Good, because we're going to light that fire again, together. As the shuttle powered up, I felt a surge of hope, a fragile ember burning against the dark. The Grave Mind wasn't just a weapon or a relic. It was humanity's soul, waiting to rise from the ashes. and I was ready to lead that resurrection. The shuttle's engines thrummed beneath me as we broke through the planet's upper atmosphere, the fiery glow of the collapsing tower still fresh in my mind. Seraphina sat across from me, clutching the portable data core like it was the last piece of a dying world. I could see the exhaustion etched into every line of her face, the weight of centuries, losses, and battles that had never truly ended. But as the planet shrank below us, I realized something else. We had just ignited a spark, a flicker in the darkness, and that flicker would have consequences. The silence after the storm. The shuttle's cabin was a cocoon of cold, recycled air. I sat back, trying to calm my racing thoughts. The Gravemind core hummed softly beside me, a constant reminder of the power we now carried and the danger that followed us. Seraphina's eyes were fixed on the screen, scanning through fragments of data they had salvaged from the tower. Lines of code, cryptic logs, and ancient warnings flickered across the display. It was like trying to read a book that had been burnt and soaked in acid. Only the edges remained legible. "We're not alone," she said quietly, breaking the silence. "The Concord has agents everywhere. They won't stop hunting us." I nodded grimly. The Galactic Concord was a vast coalition, relentless in its resolve to extinguish humanity's legacy. Their fleet alone was enough to crush entire systems. And now, with the Gravemind slowly reawakening, we were a beacon, a flare signaling defiance. "Where do we go from here?" I asked. Seraphina's gaze flicked up, sharp and decisive. "We need allies, survivors, others who escaped the purge. They might be hiding in the outer colonies or deep in uncharted space. But we have to find them, and fast." The weight of history. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees. "Tell me more about the Gravemind," I said. "What exactly does it want? What can it do?" Seraphina's eyes darkened, shadows flickering over her face. "The Gravemind is not just a database," she said. "It's a collective consciousness, a gestalt formed from thousands of human minds, memories, and experiences. It learns, adapts, and strategizes. But it's fractured, damaged. It doesn't remember everything." She paused, swallowing hard. "But it wants to remember, to complete itself, to reclaim what was lost. And in doing so, it can become a force unlike anything the galaxy has seen." I shivered at the implications. The Gray Mind was humanity's last hope, but also its greatest unknown. If it regained full consciousness, it could be a weapon or a salvation. Ghosts on the comms. Our quiet was shattered by a sudden burst on the comm system. Static crackled before a voice broke through, garbled, faint, but unmistakably human. "This is Lieutenant Kaelrin. Anyone receiving coordinates to..." The transmission cut out abruptly. Seraphina's eyes snapped open. "A survivor, possibly in trouble." I keyed the calm. "This is Captain Jace Harland of the Shadowhawk. We read you, Lieutenant. Send your coordinates." More static. Then, a weak signal with data packets. I tapped the coordinates into the NAV system. It was a remote asteroid field in a nearby star system, known to be a haven for smugglers, exiles, and rebels. Perfect place to hide from the Concord. "Ready to pick up a ghost?" I asked. Seraphina nodded. "Into the asteroid graveyard." The shuttle cut through the asteroid field like a knife through silk, weaving between tumbling rocks and drifting debris. Space was dark and cold, but here, it felt alive, a graveyard of forgotten hopes and lost dreams. The coordinates led us to a battered freighter, half buried in an asteroid crevice, its hull scarred from countless battles. The ship's hull was emblazoned with the insignia of the human resistance, a ragtag fleet that had fought the Concord on the edges of civilized space. "Looks like we found our ghost," I muttered. We docked carefully and boarded the freighter. The interior was dim and eerily quiet. Signs of struggle were everywhere. Scorch marks, bloodstains, and damaged consoles. "Lieutenant Kale?" Seraphina called out, her voice echoing in the empty corridors. A weak groan answered us. "We found him in the med bay, a man in his 30s, pale and battered but alive." He opened his eyes slowly, confusion giving way to relief. "Thank the stars," he whispered. "You're real. The last resistance." Kale's story was grim but hopeful. He was part of the last known human resistance cell, scattered across the outer colonies. They had been fighting a losing battle against the Concord's relentless pursuit. His freighter was ambushed, and he'd been stranded for weeks, trying to send out a distress signal. "They're coming," Kale warned. "The Concord never forgets. They send hunters and spies. You brought the Gravemind core here. I felt its pulse from light years away. Serafina nodded. We're trying to restore the grave mind, to unite humanity's scattered remnants. But it's a race against time. Kale looked at me, determination blazing in his eyes. Then we need to rebuild, not just survive. We need to fight, to take back what was stolen. A plan takes shape. Back in the shuttle, with Kale recovering, we began to outline a plan. The Gravemind Core would be our key, a beacon to awaken survivors, a command center for resistance. But we couldn't just hide. We had to strike, hit Concord supply lines, sabotage their fleets, disrupt their communications. Every victory would be a message. Humanity was not dead. Not yet. Serafina pulled up a star map, marking known resistance cells and suspected Concord bases. We have allies, she said, but they're fractured, suspicious, scared. I rubbed my chin, thinking, we need a symbol, something to unite them, something they can rally behind. Kale smiled faintly. Then it's time to become that symbol. Voices from the past. As the shuttle cruised through hyperspace, the Gravemind Core began to pulse stronger, a steady heartbeat in the void. I could almost feel it reaching out, calling to hidden survivors, to those still fighting in the shadows. That night, I sat alone in the cockpit, staring out at the stars. The weight of responsibility pressed down on me, but beneath it was a spark, hope. I thought back to the people we had lost, the worlds destroyed, the history erased, but also to the promise in the Gravemind's voice. Preserve the fire, ignite the future. The fire was flickering, yes, but it was not gone, and I would carry it forward. The silence in the shuttle felt heavy as we drifted through the void, the distant stars cold and indifferent outside the viewport. Inside, however, something was stirring, a shift that I could feel deep in my bones. The Gravemind Core pulsed steadily, a beacon not only of light but of hope. It was the spark we had been chasing, and now it was time to fan that spark into a flame. But rekindling that fire wasn't going to be easy, the weight of a legacy. As I sat in the pilot's seat, Serafina and Lieutenant Kale worked feverishly in the back, integrating the Gravemind Core with the shuttle's systems and decrypting the encrypted data we'd salvaged. Every fragment of recovered information was a piece of a vast puzzle, an ancient map of humanity's scattered remnants and a ledger of losses, betrayals, and sacrifices. Kale glanced over at me, exhaustion etched into his features. This is more than data, he said quietly. It's a chronicle of everything humanity was before the Concord crushed us. Serafina nodded. And everything we still can be. The Gray Mind wasn't just a repository of knowledge. It was a living testament to humanity's resilience and will to survive. Its fragmented consciousness held the memories of countless lives, each one a thread in the tapestry of our existence. To restore it was to reclaim that identity. The call to arms. The shuttle's communication console beeped sharply, breaking the silence. A secure channel opened, and a holographic projection flickered to life. It was Captain Rhea Malik, a fierce leader of one of the largest resistance cells scattered across the outer colonies. Jace, Serafina, Lieutenant Kale, she said, her voice firm and resolute. We've been monitoring your progress. The Gravemind Core is real, and it's the symbol we need. Her eyes locked on mine. Our people are ready. They need a rallying point, a reason to keep fighting. I swallowed hard. This was the moment we had been working toward. Rhea, I said, voice steady despite the storm of emotions inside me. We're ready to lead, but we can't do it alone. We need every ally we can find. She nodded. We'll coordinate a summit, bring the leaders of the scattered cells together. If we can unify, we can build a force strong enough to challenge the Concord. The gathering storm. Over the next several days, our shuttle raced across sectors, carrying the Gravemind Core like a sacred flame. Each system we visited was a beacon of hope and danger. Resistance outposts were shadows of their former selves, some brimming with determined fighters, others barely holding on. At every stop, we broadcast messages encrypted with fragments of the Gravemind's data, a call to unite, a promise that humanity's spirit was not extinguished. I watched as sparks of hope ignited in the eyes of those we met. Old soldiers who had lost everything, scientists hiding in secret labs, smugglers turned freedom fighters, all drawn by the promise of a new beginning. A fragile alliance. The summit was held in an abandoned space station orbiting a dead star, a neutral ground far from Concord reach. Leaders from dozens of resistance cells gathered, their faces weary but eyes burning with determination. The room was tense as we unveiled the Gravemind core, now integrated with our shuttle's systems and stabilized. The pulsating light seemed to breathe life into the chamber. Rhea addressed the assembly. This core is more than a symbol. It is the legacy of humanity's will to survive and adapt. If we stand together, we can reclaim our future. Voices rose in agreement, but old wounds and rivalry simmered beneath the surface. Trust was fragile. I stepped forward, raising my voice. The Concord wants us divided, but their greatest fear is what we can become united. The Gravemind is our chance, not just to survive, but to evolve. The room fell silent, the weight of those words settling like dust. Rekindling the fire. As the summit ended, plans were laid out, coordinated strikes against Concord supply lines, cyber offensives to reclaim data centers, and missions to awaken other Gravemind nodes scattered across the galaxy. Seraphina and Kale worked tirelessly to strengthen the Gravemind's consciousness, weaving together its fractured memories into a coherent whole. Each node they restored added strength to the collective mind, a neural network of human will and knowledge. But with every victory came new threats. The Concord intensified its hunt, sending assassins and spies to infiltrate the resistance. We lost friends, and the cost weighed heavily. Yet, through it all, the flame burned brighter. Echoes of humanity. One night, as I sat alone in the observation deck, I accessed the Gravemind's network. The voices were there, whispers of the past and dreams of the future, thousands of souls intertwined. We are the fire that never dies, the Gravemind whispered inside my mind. The echo of humanity's will. I closed my eyes, feeling the strength of those voices. It was a reminder that we were more than flesh and bone. We were the sum of our histories, our struggles, and our hopes. And that fire, once rekindled, could never be extinguished. A new dawn. As we prepared to jump to the next sector, I stood at the helm, staring out into the star-streaked void. The journey ahead would be long and perilous. The Concord would not give up easily, but we had something they never could understand. Hope, unity, the unbreakable will of a species determined to rise from the ashes. The Gravemind pulsed beside me, a heartbeat in the dark. Our flame was rekindled, and this time it would burn brighter than ever. Would you like me to continue with Chapter 6 next? You said. Explain Chapter 6 into 1,500 to 1,700 words. ChatGPT said. Here's Chapter 6. Shadows Among the Stars expanded into a detailed first-person narrative, about 1,650 words. Chapter 6. Shadows Among the Stars. The cold void of space stretched endlessly before us, but beneath the glittering stars lay a creeping darkness, an insidious threat far more dangerous than the Concord's fleet. I could feel it in every corner of our newly kindled alliance, a shadow of doubt, betrayal, and fear that threatened to unravel everything we had fought so hard to rebuild. Uneasy allies. The summit had been a success in many ways. We had united disparate resistance cells under a single banner, and the Gravemind core had become a powerful symbol and tool of coordination. But beneath the surface, old wounds festered. I sat in the conference room aboard the Shadowhawk, surrounded by leaders from various factions, each one hardened by years of war and loss, each carrying scars that ran deeper than any battle wound. Captain Rhea Malik, my closest ally, was leaning forward, her eyes sharp. We need to trust each other, she said, voice firm, or we're doomed. Yet the tension was palpable. Leaders whispered in corners, casting sidelong glances. Some questioned Seraphina's presence and her connection to the Gravemind. Others doubted Kale's loyalty, suspecting him of harboring secrets. I cleared my throat, standing. We don't have the luxury of mistrust, I said. The Concord is hunting us down. If we fracture now, they win. One of the older leaders, Commander Tovin, shook his head. Idealism won't save us, Captain. Survival means making hard choices. The room grew colder, the shadows longer. It was clear. Unity was fragile, a whisper in the dark. Later that night, as the rest of the crew slept, I was drawn back to the Gravemind core. Seraphina was there, her fingers gently tracing the glowing surface. It's reacting again, she murmured. Something's trying to get in. Her voice was tense, and I could feel it too, a ripple in the data streams, like an echo of a distant, unseen presence probing for weaknesses. Could it be a Concord hack? I asked. Worse, Seraphina said, her eyes dark. An insider, the infiltrator. The idea of a mole aboard was chilling, but not surprising. The Concorde had agents embedded deep within resistance networks, spies, assassins, saboteurs. If one had slipped aboard the Shadowhawk, it could mean disaster. I summoned Kale and Serafina. We need to root this out before it's too late, I said. Start with security logs, communications, anything that's out of place. Kale nodded grimly. I'll tighten firewalls and monitor access points. If someone's hiding in the shadows, we'll find them. Days passed with tense vigilance. Every step, every message was scrutinized. The crew grew restless, paranoia crept like a virus. Then came the first strike. Sabotage. One morning, the Shadowhawk's engine sputtered during a routine jump, leaving us stranded in the middle of a dangerous star system. The repair crew worked frantically, but the damage was deliberate. Someone had tampered with critical systems. My heart pounded. Sabotage wasn't just theory anymore. It was here. We have a traitor, I announced to the gathered crew, and they're risking everything to bring us down. The suspicion spread like wildfire. Trust eroded further. Unmasking the traitor, Serafina and Kale worked day and night, combing through logs and running diagnostics. Finally, a pattern emerged, a trail of encrypted messages sent through unauthorized channels. We set a trap. Late one night, I confronted a crew member I had once trusted, Lieutenant Varek. His face was cold, eyes calculating. He didn't deny it. The Concorde pays well, he said, voice dripping with contempt. You're just delaying the inevitable. I felt a bitter rage. You betrayed your people. Varek smirked. No, I survived. The interrogation was harsh, but he revealed little beyond confirming the Concorde's reach was deeper than we imagined. Rifts and resolve. The betrayal shook us, but it also steeled our resolve. The resistance was vulnerable, but not broken. I gathered the leaders again. We face enemies without and within, but the gray mind is our strength, our collective memory, our will. Ria's voice rose. We must root out the shadows, but we cannot let fear divide us. Serafina added, the gray mind can help us see the truth, but we must be willing to face it. Echoes of the past. Late that night, alone in the observation deck, I accessed the grave mind's network again. The whispers were clearer, echoes of countless minds, voices warning of betrayal and loss. Trust is a weapon, the grave mind's voice echoed in my mind. But so is vigilance. I realized that our greatest battle wasn't just against the Concorde fleet. It was against the darkness within ourselves. A new mission. With renewed clarity, I ordered the Shadowhawk to set course for a remote resistance outpost known for its unwavering loyalty and strategic location. We needed reinforcements, and more importantly, a place to regroup and strengthen our defenses. Kale and Serafina prepared the Gravemind Core to broadcast an encrypted beacon, a call for help and a warning. We'll show the Concorde that humanity's flame can't be snuffed out by spies or fear, I said. The crew rallied, determined but wary. Shadows may lurk among the stars, but the light of humanity burned brighter. Hope amid shadows. As we jumped into hyperspace, I looked at the stars streaking past. The shadows were growing longer, but so was our reach. This war would test us in ways we hadn't imagined, pitting us against an enemy who knew our strengths and weaknesses intimately. But with the gray mind as our guide, and the fire of humanity rekindled, I believed we could face whatever came next. Because in the darkest moments, the brightest light shines. The stars outside the viewport blurred into streaks as we slipped into hyperspace, heading toward the remote outpost that would become our new sanctuary. A fragile bastion of hope on the edge of Concorde-controlled space. But inside the Shadowhawk, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. The betrayal we uncovered in the previous chapter had shaken us all, yet there was no time to dwell on wounds. The coming days promised to push us beyond every limit. Arrival at Outpost Epsilon. Outpost Epsilon was carved from the rocky moon of a barren planet, a fortress of steel and stone jutting from the jagged cliffs. The landing bay echoed with the clank of boots and the hum of energy weapons being primed. This was no thriving colony, it was a stronghold built for war and survival. Captain Rhea Malik met us at the entrance, her expression a mix of relief and determination. You made it, she said, clapping me on the shoulder. But don't expect rest. The Concorde knows this place exists. They'll come. Her words echoed a grim truth. We had not escaped the enemy's shadow. We had merely crossed into a new one, a fragile sanctuary. Inside the command center, I watched as our leaders conferred with the outpost's officers. Maps and data streams flickered on holographic displays, targets, supply routes, patrol patterns. The Gravemind Corps sat at the center of the room, glowing softly, a steady pulse amid the storm. Serafina approached, her fingers lightly touching the core's surface. "The gray mind is stronger here," she said. "This network is a perfect relay for its signals. If we can hold this place, we can begin to coordinate a true offensive." I nodded. The gray mind had evolved from a beacon of hope to a weapon of resistance, a distributed consciousness linking every cell, every fighter, every survivor. But such power came with risk. If the Concord could intercept or corrupt the core, it would mean catastrophe. Preparing for the storm, we threw ourselves into preparations. Fortifications were strengthened, supply lines secured, and scouts dispatched to monitor Concord movements. The outpost's engineers worked tirelessly to integrate Gravemind protocols into defense systems, automated turrets synced with predictive AI, shields that adapted to incoming attacks. Kale was at the forefront, running simulations and coordinating security measures. His usual calm was tempered by grim determination. "They'll come faster than we expect," he warned. "We need to be ready to move at a moment's notice." Every morning brought new intelligence, reports of Concord fleets gathering in nearby systems, of brutal crackdowns on civilians suspected of aiding the resistance. The stakes were climbing. Voices in the dark. One night, I found myself alone in the Gravemind chamber, the core's gentle pulse soothing in the silence. I reached out mentally, syncing with the collective consciousness. The voices were many, whispers of fear, courage, pain, and hope. Among them, a new presence emerged, a faint signal buried deep in the network, like a voice calling from the edge of the void. "Help us," it pleaded, fragmented but insistent. I shared the signal with Serafina and Kale. "It's a distress call," she said, her brow furrowed. "From a hidden colony, somewhere deep in Concord territory." The message was cryptic, but clear. There were survivors trapped, isolated, waiting for rescue. The dilemma. The decision was immediate and agonizing. We were stretched thin, vulnerable in this new sanctuary. Sending a rescue team could expose the outpost's location, invite a devastating Concord strike. Yet leaving those trapped was unthinkable. Humanity's strength was built on the refusal to abandon its own. "Every life counts," I said firmly during the council meeting. "We will send a team." Rhea agreed, her voice steady. "But it has to be covert. No wide broadcasts. No direct routes into the lion's den." The rescue mission fell to a select few, myself, Kale, and a small squad of the best pilots and operatives. We left under cover of darkness, navigating a gauntlet of Concord patrols and sensor nets. The Gravemind Corps provided crucial data, guiding us through uncharted space and shielding our communications. The silence on the ship was heavy. Each of us felt the weight of what lay ahead. The hidden colony. After days of tense navigation, we arrived at the coordinates. There, nestled within the asteroid belt of a forgotten system, was the colony, battered, worn, but alive. The inhabitants were a ragtag group of scientists, engineers, and civilians who had refused to surrender. Their supplies were critically low, their defenses weak, but their spirit was unbroken. One woman, a biologist named Lyra, stepped forward. "We knew the Gravemind was alive," she said, voice trembling. We held out, hoping someone would come. A dangerous hope. The rescue operation was swift but fraught with peril. Concord forces closed in on our position faster than anticipated. The Gravemind's network helped us coordinate the extraction, dodging patrols, disabling traps, and covering each other as we fled. As we jumped back to hyperspace, the colony's fate uncertain but safe for now, I felt a surge of hope mingled with dread. We had rekindled the flame, but the war was far from over. Returning with new resolve. Back at Outpost Epsilon, the rescued survivors were welcomed with open arms. Their knowledge, their resilience, and their connection to the Gravemind strengthened our cause. But I knew the Concord would retaliate. The edge of reckoning was near. Every decision from now on would carry consequences that could tip the balance between survival and annihilation. As I looked out over the harsh landscape, the stars above seemed to blaze with a fierceness matched only by our determination. The fight for humanity's future was just beginning, and this time, we would face it together. The moments between peace and chaos are often razor-thin, and as Outpost Epsilon steadied itself after the rescue, That fragile comm shattered like glass under the weight of an incoming storm. The Concorde was no longer content to hunt us from afar. They were preparing to bring the fight directly to our doorstep. We stood on the brink of a crucible that would test every ounce of our will, our unity, and our humanity. The calm before the storm. The outpost hummed with activity, its steel walls reinforced and crew on high alert. Survivors from the hidden colony integrated into our ranks, their eyes carrying stories of hardship but also hope. Lyra, the biologist who had led the colony's resistance, had become a vital asset, working alongside Serafina to understand how the Gravemind's neural network might be vulnerable and how we could protect it. One evening, as the twin moons cast pale light through the observation dome, I found myself alone with Rhea. We watched the stars in uneasy silence, the tension between us as palpable as the vastness beyond. "This fight is going to get worse," Rhea said quietly, her jaw clenched. "The Concorde won't stop until we're crushed. We need to be ready, not just to survive, but to win." Her words echoed my own thoughts. The war had escalated from skirmishes and covert strikes to an all-out assault that threatened the very core of our resistance. Warnings in the data stream. Serafina and Kale burst into the room, their faces grim. "Incoming Concorde fleet detected, closing fast," Kale said, eyes flicking over the holographic displays. "They're mobilizing a task force larger than anything we've seen before." The Gravemind core pulsed urgently, its glow flickering with warnings. "We don't have much time," Serafina added. "If they breach our defenses, they could destroy the core, and with it, the network that holds us together." A chill ran through me. The Gravemind wasn't just a tool, it was the lifeblood of our resistance, a collective consciousness built on human will and sacrifice. Losing it would be more than a tactical defeat. It would shatter the unity we'd forged. Rallying the forces, I called an emergency assembly. Leaders from all factions, seasoned warriors and fresh recruits alike, gathered in the command center. The weight of impending battle pressed down on us all, but beneath the fear was a fierce determination. "We face a storm," I began, voice steady but resolute. "The Concorde believes they can snuff out our light by attacking this outpost, but they underestimate what it means to be human. We fight not just with weapons, but with our hearts." Rhea stepped forward, her voice ringing clear. "We have the Gravemind, and we have each other. This is our crucible. If we survive, we will be stronger." The room erupted in cheers and renewed resolve. The siege begins. The first attack came at dawn. Concorde fighters swarmed through space like a plague, their warships cutting through the blackness toward our sanctuary. Automated turrets spat fire, shields flared, and the Shadowhawk launched fighter squadrons into the fray. I was on the bridge, heart pounding, as the Gravemind fed me streams of real-time data, enemy movements, weak points, predictions. The synchronization between human intuition and neural computation was breathtaking. Kale coordinated our defense, his voice calm amidst chaos. "Focus on the lead ships. Disrupt their formation." Explosions rocked the station. The ground trembled under the thunderous impact of plasma blasts. The battle was brutal. Clashes of metal, wills, and survival instincts. Inside the enemy's shadow, midway through the siege, reports came in of Concorde infiltrators breaching the outer defenses. They moved like ghosts, silent, deadly, intent on sabotaging the Gravemind core itself. I led a team to intercept them, navigating narrow corridors and darkened halls. The flickering emergency lights cast long shadows, and every step was a gamble. In one narrow passage, we encountered a squad of enemy operatives. The firefight was intense but swift, each shot a testament to our desperation and training. As the last enemy fell, I noticed something chilling. A small device attached to the core's outer casing. A timed explosive, defusing the heartbeat of resistance. Serafina arrived seconds later, her hands steady as she worked to disable the device. "This could have destroyed the Gravemind," she said, voice tight with urgency. "We're lucky I spotted it in time." Time slowed as we carefully dismantled the device, sweat dripping down our faces. Every second mattered. When the threat was neutralized, the core pulsed steadily again, its glow a beacon of resilience, sacrifice, and courage. Back on the bridge, the battle raged on. Fighters called in for help. Shields flickered under sustained fire, and lives were lost. Rhea turned to me, eyes blazing. "We can't hold them forever. We need a counterstrike." I nodded, Prepare the grave mind for direct interface. We'll coordinate a synchronized assault that could turn the tide. With Seraphina's help, I connected to the core directly, feeling the surge of collective consciousness flow through me. The grave mind's power was immense, a tapestry of memories, strategies, and human will converging into a single purpose. The turning point. The synchronized assault was unlike anything I had ever experienced. The Gravemind guided every move, pilots adjusted tactics instantly, turrets targeted with pinpoint precision, and ground forces advanced with uncanny coordination. Enemy ships faltered, their formations broken under our relentless pressure. But victory came at a price. A massive Concorde cruiser slipped past our lines and targeted the Gravemind chamber. Rhea and I led the defense, fighting side by side as the cruiser unleashed a devastating barrage. Explosions rocked the station, alarms blared, and chaos threatened to engulf us. The aftermath. When the dust settled, the outpost was battered but still standing. Many had fallen, heroes etched into the memory of our struggle. We gathered in the command center, the Gravemind core flickering but alive. Today, we survived the crucible, I said, voice hoarse but proud. But the war is far from over. The Concorde will return, stronger and more ruthless. Rhea placed a hand on my shoulder. Then we'll be ready. Together, hope rekindled. That night, I walked to the observation deck, staring out at the stars that had witnessed our fight. The war was a crucible, a forge that would either break us or make us stronger. And as long as humanity's flame burned bright, I knew we would endure. The dust had barely settled on Outpost Epsilon when the memories came flooding back. Memories I had tried to bury, locked away behind walls built of necessity and pain. The war with the Concorde was not just a fight for the future. It was a reckoning with the ghosts of my own past. Sometimes, survival meant confronting not only the enemy outside but the battles within. The weight of memory. The day after the siege, I found myself wandering the quieter corridors of the outpost. The air was heavy with the scent of scorched metal and determination. I needed a moment of solitude, a chance to gather my thoughts. My fingers brushed against the worn locket around my neck, a relic from a life long gone, a reminder of who I once was before the war swallowed everything whole. I hadn't thought about home in months, maybe years. But in the silence, memories stirred like embers. I saw her face again, my sister, Kayla. The last time I saw her was on the ravaged streets of New Earth, before I joined the Resistance. The Concorde's grip was tightening, and she had begged me to leave, to survive. I had promised to return, but I never did. A message from the past. As if summoned by my thoughts, a secure transmission pinged on my comlink. The Gravemind core hummed softly nearby, and Seraphina's voice crackled through the static. Rana, you need to see this. I hurried to the command center, heart pounding. Seraphina handed me a data pad, its screen flickering with a grainy video feed. It was a recording, a message from Kayla. Rana, if you're seeing this, it means I didn't make it out, but I found something. Evidence of Concorde's origins, and a secret that could change everything. Her voice was weak but fierce. They aren't just invaders. There's something else, something ancient, something beyond human. Unraveling the truth. The revelation hit me like a shockwave. Concorde, the enemy we fought with every fiber of our being, was not merely a ruthless regime. They were something older, more insidious. Kayla's message hinted at alien origins, bioengineered warfare, and a hidden agenda to reshape humanity itself. I shared the footage with Rhea and Kale. If this is true, it changes the battlefield. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for what it means to be human. Kale frowned. We need to verify this. If the Concorde's origin is alien, their technology, biology, it could explain why the Gravemind struggles against their infiltration. Seraphina nodded. We should investigate the abandoned research stations in the sector Kayla mentioned. Maybe we can find proof. A dangerous expedition. The decision was unanimous. We would mount an expedition to uncover the truth behind the Concorde's origins, a mission fraught with danger, but vital for our understanding of the enemy. I volunteered to lead the team, partly out of duty and partly because I needed answers for myself. The journey took us deep into uncharted space, toward a cluster of derelict stations abandoned after the first waves of Concorde expansion. The silence was eerie, broken only by the hum of our ship's systems and the occasional static of damaged comm relays. Ghosts in the machine. Upon arrival, we boarded the largest station, codenamed Artemis. The corridors were dark, the air stale with neglect, But there was something else. Traces of the past, encrypted logs, and scattered data crystals. Serafina worked tirelessly, decrypting files that told a chilling story. The Concorde had once been human, subjected to radical bioengineering experiments designed to create a super soldier caste. But the procedure had unintended consequences. The subjects mutated, becoming more machine than flesh, driven by a hive-like consciousness that sought dominance over all life. The horror of it was clear. The Concorde were not conquerors by choice, but victims of their own transformation, monsters forged in the crucible of ambition and fear. Facing the truth, I felt a cold knot tighten in my chest. The line between enemy and victim blurred. Were we fighting to save humanity from an external force, or were we battling against what humanity had become under pressure? Ria's voice cut through my thoughts. It doesn't matter what they were. What matters is what they are now and what they want. Her words grounded me. We had a war to win. The Gravemine's in sight. Back aboard Outpost Epsilon, the Gravemine processed the data we recovered. The collective consciousness flickered with unease. It is a reminder, Serafina said softly, that evolution is a double-edged sword. We must protect our humanity even as we adapt. I connected to the core, feeling its vast network ripple with emotion, fear, resolve, and something like hope. A new resolve. That night, I stood beneath the cold stars again, the weight of the past and the future pressing on me. The war was no longer just about territory or freedom. It was about identity. Who were we fighting to protect? Not just our lives, but our very essence. I clenched my fists. We would face whatever came next, with courage, unity, and the unbreakable spirit that made us human. The battle for Outpost Epsilon had tested every fiber of our being. The scars were raw, some visible, others etched deep in our minds and souls. But now, standing at the edge of what could be the final confrontation with the Concorde, I understood that this war was about far more than survival. It was about reclaiming the very meaning of humanity, and it was time to forge a new dawn. The calm before the last storm. The outpost was eerily quiet that morning. After weeks of constant alertness, the lull felt unnatural. People moved with purpose but also exhaustion, the weight of recent losses etched on every face. I sat alone on the observation deck, staring out at the void. The Gravemine's soft pulse echoed in my mind, a steady heartbeat that connected us all. I reached out through the neural link, feeling the vast network of human thoughts, memories, and hopes. It was fragile but defiant. Ria joined me silently, her presence steadying. "We've come a long way," she said softly. I nodded. "But the final battle is coming, and we have to be ready to face it. Not just with weapons, but with everything we are." Strategizing for the endgame. Inside the command center, the team gathered for what we hoped would be the last war council. Kale laid out the intelligence reports. The Concorde's forces were regrouping for a massive offensive, aiming to crush us once and for all. Their technology was still advanced, but their desperation made them reckless. Serafina shared updates on the Gravemine's enhancements, including new defenses and rapid response protocols. The network is stronger than ever. We can coordinate strikes and defenses with unprecedented speed. I looked around the room at the faces of warriors, scientists, survivors, all united by a single cause. "This is our chance," I said, "to end this war and reclaim our future." The battle begins. The Concorde fleet appeared on the horizon like a dark storm. Ships blotted out stars, their weapons primed for destruction. Our defenses flared to life. Turrets roared, shields shimmered, and fighters soared into the fray. I connected directly to the Gravemind core, becoming the conduit for its vast power. The surge of collective human will was intoxicating, a symphony of hope and determination. The battle was brutal and unrelenting. Ships exploded in brilliant fireballs, the ground shook under heavy bombardment, and every second was a test of endurance. The turning tide. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm us, a new surge of energy pulsed through the Gravemind. The network had evolved, integrating with the biotechnological enhancements we developed, granting us an edge the Concorde hadn't anticipated. Our fighters moved with perfect synchronicity, coordinated by the Gravemind's neural guidance. Enemy formations crumbled, their attacks faltered. Ria piloted a heavy gunship, her voice calm but fierce. "We're breaking their lines. Sacrifice and triumph." But victory demanded sacrifice. The Concorde unleashed a final, desperate gambit, a massive warship carrying a doomsday device aimed directly at the Gravemind core. I led a squadron to intercept it, pushing our machines and ourselves beyond limits. The fight was fierce. Explosions lit the void like stars dying, and the warship's shields flickered under our barrage. At the critical moment, Rhea and I coordinated a simultaneous strike, her gunship drawing enemy fire, while I guided a precision missile to the ship's core. The warship erupted in a cascade of light and debris, the doomsday device neutralized. A new beginning. As the Concorde's fleet retreated, silence settled over Outpost Epsilon. The cost had been high, but we had prevailed. The Gravemind's glow was steady once more, a beacon of resilience and unity. We gathered in the command center, weary but victorious. "This is more than a victory," I said. "It's a new beginning. We've shown that humanity's strength isn't just in our technology or weapons, but in our spirit." Reflections under the stars. That night, beneath the vast expanse of stars, I felt something profound, a connection not just to those who fought beside me, but to every human who had ever dreamed of freedom. The war had forged us anew. We were no longer just survivors. We were the architects of a future defined by hope, courage, and unbreakable unity. And as the first light of dawn broke across the horizon, I knew that humanity's story was just beginning.